Good evening, everyone. Um, Welcome to the Education and Civil Rights Initiative, our webinar series, our town hall tonight, Wednesday, November 9th. We are here to kind of try to hold space for support for our students of color at the University of Kentucky, and create a space to kind of process and think about, reflect on what happened and think about how we can kind of take care of ourselves and avoid racial violence and hate speech incidences in the future. I want to kind of explain what the ECRI is, and share with you about our center. First, I want to acknowledge kind of what happened. So the Education and Civil Rights Initiative, we join our colleagues across campus, many of whom are on the webinar tonight and in the Lexington community, in condemning the violent racist attack on our University of Kentucky campus on Sunday morning. First and foremost, we want to stand in solidarity with and in support of Kyla Spring and Kansas Perry, who were most directly affected by this incidence of anti-Blackness. We recognize the need for change to eradicate a system of overt and structural racism. We will continue to use our platform to support underrepresented and historically marginalized populations and educate the public on educational equity and civil rights. We are committed to helping build a society that affirms the immutable characteristics and intersectional identities of all people. We are dedicated to creating a safe space for students on our campus, across our Commonwealth and beyond. So the vision of the Education and Civil Rights Initiative, the mission of ECRI is to work collaboratively with appropriate partners to ensure education is a civil right through research, community partnerships, and innovative and responsive scholarship. ECRI envisions a society that affirms the characteristics and intersectional identities of all people, including, but not limited to, those who identify as or are members of African American, Black, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, First Nations and Indigenous, LGBTQI+, diversely abled, first generation, and immigrant communities. We have aligned our vision with the Adinkra symbols. And so we anchor our work in the Kurante Ne Akuma, a symbol of democracy, sharing ideas, and taking counsel. And we have symbols, I won't try to butcher their names, that anchor our work as well, in community, in justice, in working collaboratively, and working towards a common destiny, and also making sure that we understand our past as we try to build a future. So we thank you for joining us. And let me talk a little bit about our guest today. And what we hope to do is, again, kind of talk about, create a space to kind of process what happened, think about ways that we can heal as a community. What are our options for justice in the face of racial violence? And then also hear from our students. So we want to make sure that students feel comfortable and safe in sharing, asking questions, holding us accountable for justice and healing for you all. So I'm pleased to introduce my colleagues and our comrades in this endeavor. Dr. Julian Vasquez Heilig, who's the Dean of the College of Education here at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Shambra Mulder, founder and CEO of Abundant Living Psychological and Coaching Services for Children and Adolescents, and also a Lexington chapter of the NAACP. Dr. Catrice Albert, Vice President for Institutional Diversity here at the University of Kentucky. Matthew D. Williams, Vice President of the Lexington-Fayette NAACP. Dr. Candace Hargens, Interim Chair of Educational, School, and Counseling Psychology at the University of Kentucky here in the College of Education. Dr. Kenneth Tyler, our Associate Dean of Inclusion and Internationalization at the University of Kentucky in the College of Education, and Ms. Tasia Martin, a PhD student and our Graduate Research Assistant here in ECRI, and Jocelyn Grimsley, Undergraduate Ambassador, and I think she's President of the Black Student Association here in the College of Education. Tasia, I'll have you start us off.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. I'm very excited to have this conversation this evening with all of you. I'm going to open us up with our first discussion question, and I would like Dean Heilig and Dr. Albert to speak to what the college and or the university, and when I say college, I mean the College of Education, is doing to honor the history of this conflict, and if we would like to use some recent examples within the last few years of the University of Kentucky students' conversation and engagement on campus, that would frame the work that we are about to do and the direction that we are trying to head towards.
Did you want to go, Catrice?
Dean Heilig, I will defer to you, Dean. You're my dean.
Oh, well, let me just say quickly, I'm Julian Vasquez Heilig, Dean of the College of Education, and I also am honored to serve as the Education Chair for the Kentucky NAACP and as a member of the Lexington NAACP Education Committee. So first, let me just say, I share your disappointment and dismay at this past weekend's news. The violent actions and words committed against UK students were horrendous and despicable. And I want to be frank with you today. I really don't believe that I would be sitting in this chair as dean without Black students on this campus. Just several years ago, the Black students demanded, asked for, requested, required that the University of Kentucky be engaged in these important conversations and that they bring leaders of color into colleges and onto campus to help Kentucky navigate some of the biggest challenges of our time, this sort of third rail of American society. So first, I just want to thank the students who made this opportunity for me possible. But I think we are coping with this problem, this latest issue on campus by leaning and lifting one another. And that leaning and lifting many forms in our college and on this campus. But most importantly, we have to move from thoughts and prayers to action. Students, faculty, and staff, including the Education and Civil Rights Initiative, which we began, it's a first of its kind collaboration with the National NAACP on this campus that we began 3 years ago. We are meeting and thinking, this is a part of that work. We need to enact meaningful anti-racist and self-care opportunities for our college. And we need to encourage our colleagues across campus to do so also. So I think that work is evolving. We met with students yesterday, including some that are on this call. And they've provided input and ideas for us going forward. And we look forward to hearing from you, our students, from you, our faculty, from your staff, and from the community on things that they think we need to be doing as we're moving forward. So I think this town hall, definitely an important step forward, but so much more to do in the coming days.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Dean. And I appreciate being invited to be a part of this. I'm Catrice Albert, Vice President for Institutional Diversity and a part of the College of Education. So I'm just thrilled to be here with you at this necessary and vital town hall. I echo the Dean's comments about how devastating the viral video that is now international with more than 3 million impressions in social media around the University of Kentucky. And I'm 1 year into the position, and I've had the chance to do this sort of work at 4 different institutions. And I keep doing this because of the passion for student development, right? We're in the human development business, but the students that we are developing shouldn't have to endure what our students endured on Sunday at 1 a.m. So, you know, I am thrusted by the arts, and the famed Gwendolyn Brooks said that we are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. And so this town hall is demonstrating that we have to be each other's business every day, right? And I am motivated, and I get energy and am captivated by student leadership at the university. Just in the last 72 hours, our offices that are situated specifically for BIPOC students, the MLK Center, that's 35 years old here, put on wonderful healing and learning sessions through My Brother's Keeper and the Sister Circle, helping our students to understand the process of adjudication with code of conduct, but also just trying to do the work of healing from yet another incident, traumatic, that oftentimes will reverberate with students because it's post-traumatic stress. They've had these incidences over and over again. Dean Heilig mentioned, you know, our work, not only through education, training, and leadership, but of care and support, right? So if we are to be a caring community that puts our students first and we take care of our people, we shouldn't have to manage these traumatic experiences over and over and over again. So I'm hopeful that in this conversation, we talk about racial battle fatigue, the fatigue that comes from having to manage these experiences over and over again around radical self-care and radical joy, because we are each other's business and we are each other's harvest and magnitude and bond. So I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Dr. Albert. Dr. Dixon, I'm going to send it over to you.
Okay. I hope everyone can hear me. I had a slow connection for a second. Thank you both, Dean Heilig and Dr. Albert, for your comments. And out to Dr. Tyler and Dr. Mulder, how can faculty support our students both in moments of crisis like this and as BIPOC students or individuals, people at a predominantly white institution?
Dr. Mulder, I'm happy to let you go first if you choose.
I'd be more than welcome to go first. Respect.
Oh, were you saying it was okay for me to go first? Oh, I thought you said I am more than happy to. So that's my bad. These headphones ain't working clearly. Okay, so just to get it started, I think it's important to acknowledge who was involved and how we use terminology to describe what actually occurred. And so with my comments, I'm going to refer to Black students because there were Black students involved who experienced violence, both in a physical and verbal form. And so I won't be using the term BIPOC. I think that all-encompassing term does a disservice to what we actually experienced, what we are talking about, what occurred 72 hours ago with both Kyla and Kansas. And I think the discontinuation of that becomes critical because, you know, because this happened to two Black women, it's important to acknowledge that our strategies, what we think of doing, our forward movement centers those Black women as opposed to centering Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. And so I think that will be step one, if not just for me, then certainly just for me in this space. When we think of what faculty can do, I think it's important to acknowledge the humanity of not only the two students that were directly impacted by this horrific, forms of violence, but also the humanity of those who are indirectly impacted by it. And so to that end, faculty should have been able to hold space for their students. Monday should not have looked like every other Monday when it came to what happens in classrooms, what happens in terms of students and their matriculation. It was a very different Monday morning, Monday afternoon, and that needed to be acknowledged by faculty. I sent an email to the faculty, staff, and students in the College of Education, making clear that because of this impact, it will be okay to engage in self-care. It will be okay to acknowledge grieving. It will be okay to hold space for these conversations in the classroom, perhaps in lieu of actually having class if need be, because this is that critically important. This was violence. And because there was a direct experience of it, but also an indirect experience of it, we have to process it. And doing so in academic spaces like classrooms within these multiple colleges at the University of Kentucky, I think is one of the best and first ways that faculty get to react. Keep in mind that many of the faculty on this call are also Black faculty. And so holding space for yourselves, giving yourselves enough time to process, giving yourselves enough opportunity to really think about what the implications for you are as a human being, indeed as a Black person, becomes critical, because then that gets to be modeled. And so there are other comments that I want to share, but the first things that we need to think about is when we react to these types of incidents, one of the first things we need to do is be student-centered, as Dr. Dixon said. But in being student-centered, we have to understand that because the students aren't the same, the spaces that the students occupy can't be the same either. The classroom is no longer the classroom on that Monday morning. That needs to be respected.
Okay, hi. So I will speak as a former UK student. I'm an alumni. I spent a lot of years at the University of Kentucky. I have an undergraduate degree, graduate degree, and a professional degree from the University of Kentucky. It's the only university that I've attended. So as a Black student on the campus of University of Kentucky for the 90s and 2000, I would say that faculty and staff was very important. We had spaces that we could go to, that we can know that there's going to be other Black students and other Black faculty and staff there. And we knew that we had Black faculty that we can go to. And so when I think about the equity initiative at the University of Kentucky and a sense of belonging, I don't think that there was necessarily a sense of belonging from big UK, but there were always pockets and places that we could go. And so the University of Kentucky needs to hire more Black faculty and staff. And that could be, from the janitorial staff, the library staff, seeing a Black face was a lot. It meant a lot. And everybody knew what the look was, what the experience was. And so I tell people, you do belong at the University of Kentucky. You have every reason to take advantage of all the resources there, but you have to find those places so that you know that you belong in some of those places and be careful in other places. Of course, as a psychologist, I think that the counseling center should have more Black therapists there so that students know that they can go there and they can choose to. I'm not sure that they can, but they should be able to ask. And that should be, if it's not available at the university should pay for them to get it somewhere else. And so I think that with the access of mental health in the city, in the state, that's opened up through telehealth, that is something that the university can do for those students, vicariously watching that as well as experiencing it.
Thank you. Tiaja, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to stay in that same vein. There we go. We're going to stay in the same vein that Dr. Mulder and Dr. Tyler were just speaking to, but we're going to shift more so into talking about how students can practice self-care in response to the recent events and trying to manage the environment on campus right now. So Dr. Hargens and Matthew, Please introduce yourselves to us and kind of talk to us about some different tools or techniques or ways to utilize some of the things that Dr. Mulder and Dr. Tyler just touched on. Dr. Hargens, can you start with that for us, please?
Absolutely. Hey, y'all. My name is Dr. Candace Hargens. I'm an associate professor in counseling psychology and interim department chair of the Educational School and Counseling Psychology program. And racial trauma is real. And specifically, I know it's real here at the University of Kentucky because in 2018, I conducted a study and the paper is called "White People Stress Me Out All the Time." And that's a direct quote from Black students at the University of Kentucky. And you can find that paper published where it details how Black students here at the University of Kentucky defined racial trauma for themselves. They talked about it being not surprising, frequent, severe, long-standing, and enduring, that it sits with them and goes everywhere they go in the university, and that there are few spaces that feel sacred and almost no spaces that feel safe. And what's important about that concept is that when you understand racial trauma and have the language for it, then maybe you can understand that there are options for racial healing as well. And so those same students that I sampled for that study in 2018 broke down how the racial trauma affects them in their bodies. They talked about it sitting with them. They talked about it letting out. And that means that they felt it in their bodies. So I want you to check in for a moment in your body, everybody who's in attendance. Check in with your chin, your head, your heart. How's your heart rate feeling? Your stomach? How's your gut? Your shoulders, your back, your hands, your breathing. Is it shallow or is it deep? At the somatic level, the physiological level, we experience racial trauma. So it's not just hurt feelings. There's a physical consequence to dealing with racism. But it is emotion. You might feel rage, you might feel numbness because it's so frequent that your body has just checked out emotionally and physically. You might feel sadness, heartbreak. I feel contempt, disgust, and annoyance. Like those are the two feelings and emotions for me. And then it affects your mind, the way you think. So maybe you've had a hard time concentrating for this week, hard time focusing. Maybe you're constantly trying to figure out how you'll protect yourself if it happens to you, feeling hypervigilant. All of these are symptoms of racial trauma. And at the healing level, here are some interventions you can think of. One, for those of you who identify as Black people, I created a meditation called the Black Lives Matter Meditation for healing racial trauma. And it walks you through mindfulness activity. It walks you through affirmations specific to the Black experience. And then it walks you through metta, which is loving kindness meditation. It's about 17 minutes. And I know most students don't even feel like they have 17 minutes to spare, but that practice helps you get grounded in your body and process your emotions. For those of you who identify as white or people who are not Black, there's an ally and accomplice meditation for cultivating an anti-racist mindset. You're going to want to find that and use it because we're trying to prevent racist violence at the university. And in order for us to prevent anti-Blackness and racist violence, we need white people and people who don't identify as Black to get on board with their own healing and work so that they can stop perpetuating this violence intentionally or unintentionally. You can also do something that's called collective care. So a lot of language around self-care is important. So going to therapy, journaling, those things that you do by yourself, but collective care is essential because healing racial trauma is work that's done in solidarity. And so lean on each other, be with each other, hug each other, dap up, sing together, have Black joy, cry together, enjoy your lives, do whatever you need to do in community, because that community and collective care is what then gives us the creative, energetic power to transform systems. We know that 60 years ago, 70 years ago, we weren't even admitted. 30 years ago, I wouldn't have been a faculty member. So specific to Black people's experiences on the University of Kentucky's campus, we have a long way to go, but you are here, we are here, and this is our space now. And that's a part of your healing, owning, taking up, and shifting the space in a way that facilitates your well-being.
Man, let me just chew on that for a minute, because wow, all of the words and receive all of that. How's everybody doing this evening? Matthew Williams, lover, thinker, husband, father, connector, builder. I aspire to be a bridge. I'm grateful to be in this space, to share this space with you all. I'm not excited about the circumstances, but they're nothing new. I think it was Dr. Albert that mentioned PTSD earlier, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately, for people like us, we persistently deal with this. We need, I remember saying this to Dr. Candace before, we need something new in that book. You know what I'm saying? We need something new in that DSM that says persistent traumatic stress disorder, because this is the kind of things that are heaped upon us. And not just in our own personal lives. It's the things that are stored in our bodies that Dr. Candace is talking about. These have been passed down to us intergenerationally, historically, and then they're pressed into our policies and our laws, and it allows it to perpetuate and show up in these violent ways. I just want to send positive and healing vibes and blessings to Kyla, Kansas, their families, to everybody here. We should not have to live in a world that treats us this way. And I'm inspired by the students. I'm inspired by the younger generation that continues to just step up and imagine a world that you want to see. I was texting with the president of the UK NAACP earlier today, and I encouraged him and encourage you all to continue to imagine a world that's liberated, and demand that right now. Demand that right now. When we talk about this self-care piece, for me, I define self-care as anything that brings me healing and or joy without causing harm to myself or others. One way I think that disrupt these status quos, these what I call trauma perpetuating systems, is to just love on ourselves. And Dr. Kenneth just listed a whole plethora of beautiful things you can do. But shit, anything that brings you joy, anything that brings you healing and ain't causing no harm, do that. And then do it together. Because there ain't no self-care without collective care. They cannot exist without each other. And when we share space, it creates this container for us to share our energy. We can share pain. We can share in that healing. That's what our people come from. That's what we need to do in order to heal. So the last thing I will say, I find myself saying quite a bit recently, is just to move at the speed of your own capacity and prioritize that. And that's for all of us. We should not be pushing past our capacity. We've all been socialized in a world that tells us we need to go, go, go. Forget all that. When it's time to rest, rest. When it's time to play, play. All right, we need to imagine a new world where we are fully liberated, and we need to demand that world right now. And for us on this Zoom, we're looking to y'all, we're looking to our younger folks to continue to step up. I want to speak less and lift more. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it right there. I love y'all.
Thank you both to Dr. Hargens and to Mr. Williams, Brother Williams, bringing us the word at the end, holding us up. We appreciate it. And we wanna, we're gonna go to the next question, but one thing I'm gonna ask, actually, Tej, I'm gonna have you ask the last question. I'm gonna ask this question to my colleagues here. When we think about kind of accountability, and I appreciate the healing that we need to go through and the kind of self-care piece, but in some ways it shifts the it shifts the responsibility to us, right? That we have to somehow find a way to make it through through a experience that no one in 2022 should have to live through, right? We shouldn't expect on a university campus that young our freshmen, any student would be called out their name and called one of the most vile and violent racial epithets, and then also face physical violence as well. That shouldn't expect that at all, but certainly on a university campus. What kinds of accountability piece measures, or what should we expect in terms of accountability for people who are perpetrators? So yes, we need to heal. Yes, we need to be in community. And I am really proud of the way that we have tried to embrace our young sister who was harmed, and both the young sisters who were harmed. But what can we expect, and what could we demand? What should we agitate for by way of accountability? And whoever feels comfortable kind of addressing that. I mean, there's some obvious administrators here, but I would open it up to any of our colleagues here.
Yeah, Dr. Dixon, it's Catrice Albert, and I appreciate the question. And we are a university that has a code of conduct for everybody on the campus. We have the North Star around our value system of respect and accountability and integrity and compassion. And when we don't live up to those values, the code of conduct for students and the code of conduct for faculty and staff should be that accountability measure. Now, I think what has historically been problematic for Black people, Dr. Tyler, for Black people, is that, the system never is in our favor. And so, the accountability measures that are necessary with the code of conduct is the adjudication process. Now, what we find in times of just like this, where it is racial violence and it's racial and sexist harassment, it never moves as quickly as we would like it to. So the adjudication process and the code of conduct gives a student due process. Because this student, both students, Kyla and Kansas, were employees, there are also accountability measures through institutional equity, because it's a human resources issue. So those are the two sort of measures that the university has set up. It's never as fast as we would like it to go. And when this continues to happen, we also have to educate and re-educate all of our community members, number one, of the values that we are to embody around accountability, integrity, respect, compassion. And then we have to allow due process to happen. Never as fast as we would like it to go.
Thank you. I think that's an important piece, and I appreciate you explaining that there is a process, and despite this young woman acting outside of the code of conduct and the kind of norms of how we want to treat each other, that there is a process for how we deal with breaches of that kind of trust. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to say something about accountability? Yeah.
Outside of the code of conduct and consequences, I would like to see the university do some things to move the university forward in its equity. So beyond, scholarships, think more about what you're inviting students to and how you can make that a better place. And so, and it beyond the brown faces in faculty and staff. And so I'm often, when we're talking about equity, we don't talk about white supremacy. And so what we saw was a display of white supremacy. It said that I am better because, and this place belongs to me because I am white. And that comes into the curriculum. If I think about, you know, had I ever heard about a Black psychologist when I was in the psychology program? Maybe when I took multicultural psychology. However, I've spent my undergrad years, had I heard about a Black psychologist? I don't think so. So when I think about the curriculum that doesn't reflect my culture, that's something that the university could look into, and training not only on equity, but white supremacy and hate. And when I think about the courses we have to take, as an undergraduate, we have a global world-class education there, but how many courses are required and how many courses are chosen by students? And so that we can educate students who may not have gotten that prior to coming to the University of Kentucky of what it means to be racist and what it means to be anti-racist.
Thank you.
I'd
What
like to,
else? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to echo the comments of Dr. Mo.
Kenneth.
Yes, I'm sorry, Kenneth Tyler speaking. I'd like to echo the comments from Dr. Mulder. There was a sign at Monday's rally that said, quote, racism is taught, and T-A-U-G-H-T, taught, not T-A-U-T. And in that messaging from that sign, the memo for me was the perpetrator got these actions and these ideologies from somewhere. And that's important to acknowledge. You know, racism in a form of behaviors where responses and accountability get to be actionable. We can't screen people's mindsets, but we can ultimately do something about racist behavior displayed. That was done quite well, I would argue, at the university level. A statement just came out today from the university president banning the perpetrator from campus and from re-enrolling, which I think was definitely a good step forward as we await, you know, criminal charges. That said, racism is taught in that vein, but we also have to think about the teaching of racism and how it can actually lead to the creation of less racist. And to that end, within a college of education, it becomes important for us to kind of take a really critical look at our curriculum and get a sense of who we are not talking about. What contributors are not there? As Dr. Mulder mentioned, you can go through a whole psychology major without understanding, knowing, or acknowledging the contributions of Black, also Latinx, Indigenous populations who have their very own frameworks. We're not just talking about folks who wrote articles, but we're talking about centralizing different perspectives from different cultural beings and their takes on what psychology is and what it means for the populations and communities they serve. You can go through 4 years of education and not know who we are, but that's on us. And so as we're thinking about racism being taught, it's important for us to think about, well, maybe we ought to be teaching about racism, and maybe we ought to be lessening it in our curriculum by adding. We're going to lessen racism by actually being more inclusive of scholars of color to that 100 level course, that 200 level course, that 300 level course, because racism is often tied to the invisibility and the dehumanization of people of color, primarily Black people. So it makes sense for me to be racist if I'm never seeing Black people in a course that I'm teaching, in a syllabus that I've just gotten, that I've just received for a course, or an article that I have to read. Maybe we're engaging in racist practices by not ensuring that all students have an awareness of the contributions of Black scholars. And so the accountability piece operates at the faculty level, but more importantly, at the administrative level, because we now have to think about who's going to mandate that. At what level do associate deans and vice presidents of institutional diversity and provosts and presidents and boards of trustees create an anti-racist institution by ensuring that anti-racism is part of every single institutional fiber. We want to teach racism. Their whole theories, critical race theory, and also intersecting critical theory about race, they exist. They should be part of our curriculum. We have to think about how to make that so. And keep in mind where, because of the courage shown by Kyla in Kansas, we now have a mandate. They should not be taking the same types of courses in the same types of ways with the same type of curriculum and contributions by the same tired textbooks, tired articles, etc. This was a wake-up call for all faculty to rethink what it is that we're doing and how we might be enabling racists by ensuring that Black folk and other folks of color remain invisible.
Thank you, Dr. Tyler. That was very profound, and I think I'll pass this to Tiaja because it kind of touches on the next piece, the next question that we were going to ask, and then we'll circle back to. I'd like to circle back to some of the issues that you raised. Tiaja, I'll pass to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I am going to build this question off of Dr. Tyler's last point, but I also want to talk about the tension in this conversation. Oh, can you all hear me? Okay, am I still good to go? Okay, so I'd like to build off of Dr. Tyler's last point and kind of pull on the tension of talking about Black students, Black faculty, Black knowledge production, and center it around Black women. Very often, Black women's experiences are lost within tied to Black female students that experience violence. So for the Black professionals that are on here, can you all kind of speak to what it means to practice self-care and centering Black womanhood in this conversation so we don't lose the factor of gender identity and how that plays a role into how we talk about taking care of ourselves or paying attention to how violence impacts the gender lens in addition to what's already been said.
I'm happy to jump in for this one. So when I trained the top 50 leaders of the university in anti-racism, I looked around our Zoom room and I recognized that I was the only Black woman there. I was not a part of that leadership body. I was there training them as an assistant professor without tenure. And that has only incrementally changed since that time with the invitation of Dr. Albert to the table, but she shouldn't have to carry all of this work on her shoulders. And I find that replicating itself at the department level, at the student level, at the dean level. Where are Black women's ideas, leadership, thought leadership, power, vision, expertise? And so I think that we bank on Black women to be the mules and to do it uncompensated or undercompensated. We bank on Black women to have poise in the face of terrorism. We bank on Black women to heal people and to gather us back, to hold us after we have been harmed. And we do it without gratitude, and we do it without compensation, and then we do it without protection. And I think that is central in this conversation. So the ways that intersecting racism and sexism, gendered racism, in Gioni Lewis's words, operate is that you don't see Black women in the positions where we could make definitional and decisional power as often as you need to based on our expertise that's called upon for free. And then when we do get there, are we listened to? Are we supported? Are we heard? Are we valued? Or are we left to be the only one in the room? And so I don't want that to be the case for the students that I'm mentoring or the students that are coming behind me. And so my responsibility in this role as chair and in whatever other roles that I take on are to change the system, to dismantle these pieces of the system to the extent of my capacity, in the words of Matthew, so that they have more ease and avenues to do all of the good work that they're here to do, well compensated and maintaining their wellness.
And
Thank
can
you.
I weigh in here? And I think it's incumbent upon leaders.
Yes.
Can you hear me? So I think it's incumbent upon leaders to put Black women in those positions of influence, whether it be department chairs, whether it is the 4 spectacular Black women that are leading our Education and Civil Rights Center, in the halls of power, to stand as allies with those women so that they don't have to do the heavy lifting when they're facing heavy odds. I think that we as Black men and as men in general, this generation says, show me the receipts. I think a lot of folks talk about this work in theoretical ways. But I think it's important to see what are the actions and what are the results of our leaders and hold them accountable. We were talking about accountability for the person who took those despicable actions this past weekend, but I also think we have to hold our leaders accountable. My point to leaders in this university this week was we absolutely have to address this situation in the short term. But in the long term, we need to hold ourselves accountable for results on climate, results on recruiting students of color and faculty of color, and creating safer spaces for those students and those faculty as they come. So I fully believe that part of that accountability has to be accountability for our academic leaders too.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean Heilig. We also want to open the floor for Jocelyn to the extent that she can. She can't represent every undergraduate student, but certainly as a student leader to say something. We will say that we will address some questions. We'll address questions from the Q&A, and there's one we want to start with about the composition of the town hall, and we take that very seriously, and we want to make sure that we are, again, holding space for all students and how they have experienced the racial violence this week. But Jocelyn, did you have anything you wanted to share relative to kind of the student experience on campus?
Yeah, of course. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Grimsley. I am the president of the Black Student Union, and I'm also College of Education student ambassador as well. And in light of everything that has happened over the last 72 hours, it has been a lot from a student leader side. A lot of people don't see a lot of the work that I do as a president for the Black Student Union, being able to support the students in the best way that I can, as well as being a student. I am a senior here at the University of Kentucky, so I also have a lot going on as well. And I just always want to be a support there for the students, and other student leaders on campus are helping me alongside all of this that's going on. And we're trying to basically get something together that we can reach out to the university for. And one of my counterparts, he just wanted to mention, his name is Shakori Tinsley, that Black students and minority students as a whole refuse to go under the rug, and we won't allow for business as usual. And we plan to mobilize minority students to bring a list of acts for the university, and we plan to hold them accountable to real change, because we all do attend this university, and we do want to see change to prevent things like this from happening. And it's not the first time, and we know it won't be the last. We know it won't be the last at all, but we do want to prevent it, and we want to do it in the best way possible. And in regards to like dialogue, it doesn't do anything when there's no action behind it. And we need to hold faculty and staff accountable because y'all are here for us. And that's what we need. We didn't just attend this university just to be here by ourselves. We need you all is the best way possible. And just holding the staff responsible and pressure them to allow student leaders into these spaces that represent the entire student demographic. And then moving forward with that, the best piece of advice for any of the panelists here tonight is that don't feel the need to have all the answers right now. If you need time to process and take that, you have the time for that. You can't serve students at your best if you're not at your best.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I want to thank all of our panelists. We're not closing down. We're going to go to Q&A, so please stay. And we want to make sure that we get through. We have quite a few questions, and we thank you all for posing your questions. And we want to make sure that we can get through all of them. So some we may direct to some of our panelists. So please, just if you feel moved to answer, please do. I think my colleague, Dr. LaCour and Mariama are going to take over the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mariama Lockington. I'm going to be working with Tiaja, who's on here, just to get through some of these questions. And I know we do want to start with a question that came in about this space and just hold some space for this one. So thank you for posing this. The question is, it comes from a student. Thank you for organizing this event. I'm particularly grateful for the coping options provided by Dr. Hargens and Mr. and Matthew, and appreciate Dr. Tyler naming the importance of situating this event within intersectional identity. As a student, I'm disappointed when I think of a town hall space. I imagine something student-led with a student panel and folks in power sitting with them and holding the mic for them. How can this Zoom be adapted to allow for this?
Thank you for that question. And I apologize that you feel that this isn't a space for you. We actually wanted to create a space that was student-centered. We wanted to respond quickly and not let a lot of time pass between the incident and kind of showing up for students. And so we certainly would love to organize another session, another town hall that is student-led. Again, for us, I work in the world of the faculty, so we reached out to as many people as we could, but we certainly want to make sure that you all are seen and that you have a space to speak. We also didn't want to put the burden on students, given the freshness of the incident, and so again, to kind of let students know on campus, particularly Black students, that that as a community of Black faculty, we are here to listen, to offer whatever support that we can for you all. So we humbly apologize if the space feels that it is not for you, and we would love to rectify that.
Yeah, I think we absolutely can have another event, and that event can be organized in the next couple of days. This is Julian Vasquez-Heilig, Dean of the College of Education. We also had a group of student leaders here at my home yesterday. There was about 25 student leaders. This was one of the issues that we talked about yesterday too. So this is not the only forum. There's some other forums too. We have the Minority Education Association, which has been reorganized this year. So we welcome students to join that. And Dr. Tyler is also putting together our Equity and Inclusion Student Advisory Committee, which is another forum that we've had, especially active during the pandemic, and plan on reconvening this year too. So please don't think that this is the only opportunity that students are going to have. Yesterday, the students gave us lots of good feedback and ideas for action And so I do anticipate we can have a student town hall in the coming days too, but please also consider the Minority Education Association. Please also consider the Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee in the college.
And I would just add real quick to everybody watching, at the least, I hope that you all can see some faces that are going to be here to support you. At the least, I know it's a big university. Everybody might not know the faces that's on this Zoom right now. The space turned out the way it is, but at the least, I hope you see faces that you will now recognize and that you can seek out that are here to support you and lift you up, because you are going to be the ones that are going to be driving this change. And we're just here to support y'all.
And I'll just echo the comments of Dr. Dixon, Dr. Hollig, and Dr. Williams. The university, we have cultural spaces to support colleges like the College of Education, and the My Brother's Keeper and Sister Circle meet regularly, almost weekly. And this week it was pivoted to be able to just have that sort of healing space where administrators were there to listen and to hold up the microphone. And so I'd encourage seeking out opportunities through the MLK Center and the Women's Center for more support outside of the college and into the larger university. So I just want to echo all of the comments that were made, but to say the student leaders are being thoughtful about every student on the campus, just as the administrators.
Did we lose our moderator?
You're on mute, Mariama.
I'll move us to another question, and Tiaja can jump in when she's back. A question that's coming in, and I'll direct this to anyone who feels like they want to answer it, but someone is asking, would you please share some ways that white students can support Black students at UK?
Thank you.
And maybe hearing from Jocelyn would be great as well to start us off. I think we're having some technical stuff. Jocelyn, would you be able to start us off? Can you hear me? What are some ways that white students can support Black students on UK's campus?
I feel that white students can support Black students on campus. All right, go ahead, Dr. Dean.
No, I was just, I don't know who it was who was trying to speak, but it's lagging pretty bad. Jocelyn, please go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so a way I feel like white students can support Black students on campus is just being able to use their resources to help us provide for more resources. It's kind of like a networking thing, like knowing who you know is better. I feel like white students have access to a lot more resources on campus than minority students, and I feel like they can just utilize their resources to help better us and be there to support us if they like actually want to be an ally for Black students, and don't just do it out of, oh, like just because you see an issue going on campus. Like actually feel for that and be there for those students.
I want to jump in and add, can you use your research skills to add that question to like a Google search first, and it'll pull up lists of so many Black writers, authors, activists who have answered that question, because it's so common. And so start with what has been written, what has been done, and read people of the global majority regularly. Like read something every day that will clue you into the lived experiences of Black people. Follow people on social media who are Black and who are committed to Black liberation, and then listen to what they say and implement it in action. So sometimes that looks like giving up your seat. Sometimes that looks like, to Jocelyn's point, using the resources that you have available to you to share with the Black Student Union or to make an introduction for Black leaders. Sometimes that looks like you speaking up and taking the emotional labor of asking your professors for Black people to be represented in the syllabi. Sometimes that looks like you putting your bodies on the line at a march when there's potential for it to shift from peaceful to not peaceful. Sometimes that looks like you listening to the Black student leaders, being in right relationship with them, and divesting from the racism you've been socialized in. None of us are immune from having been socialized in racist systems, because our education system, our healthcare system, our religious systems, our political systems all have been designed to undergird and to support racism. So even if you don't feel like you have a racist bone in your body, it's likely that you grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and that's racist by design. So think about who you are in relationship with and establishing those relationships that are mutually beneficial and respectful through the lens of repair and through the lens of you taking ownership of your learning and asking the university, especially if you are a white person who comes from means, especially if you are a white person who used the legacy form of affirmative action or whose family has donated to the university, where you have the type of power to have a conversation with people in leadership, use that power in ways that liberate others.
And I would just add to that too, once you do your Google search and you find this information that's been existing all this time, go find other white students and y'all do that work together. Okay, don't come into these Black spaces, don't come into these BIPOC spaces trying to extract, because that's what white body supremacy, capitalism, racism, anti-Black racism has done for hundreds of years. Don't try to extract from us, okay? Get with your other people and do that work, do that learning. And y'all gonna have to grind up against each other to figure out what an anti-racist culture for white people looks like. That's not our job. We're over here trying to heal from hundreds of years that sets in our body, hundreds of years of brutalization, right? That's what we own. What do y'all own, right? So y'all gotta do that work in your own spaces too. Sit back and listen, and then go do that over there.
I think part of that work, especially as I think about Kyla in Kansas, who in a predominantly white institution like the University of Kentucky, it's very likely that they, in addition to people that they knew, had to keep from defending themselves regarding what was in the video. That is, there were persons who might have been a bit unsure. There were people who might have questioned the veracity of their own vision when it came to what was happening in the video. And that second guessing, that second questioning is what I think Dr. Hargans and Mr. Williams are speaking to. We don't need re-traumatization by your people, your folk, who are asking about the severity or who are making mention of how it's just a word and that it really didn't mean anything, about why she was holding her wrist in the first place. Establishing an anti-racist boundary means that we're not questioning what happened in the video when it comes to what the racism looked like. It is what it is. And that is something that white people who will become allies, because keep in mind that your allyship and your accomplished status identity is not something that you get to call yourselves. It is earned by way of your interactions with people of color, Black people who are about that business of moving towards liberation. If you are moving towards that allyship, then you're checking your people. Then it's ensuring that what they saw in the video is unequivocal. And therefore, we need to talk about what to do about it so that it doesn't happen again, rather than focusing on whether or not we saw what we actually saw.
Thank you for those responses. I'm going to move us on to a question that I'm going to actually combine a couple questions so we can get to more of these. But the first part of this question is, does UK require diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all its students and faculty? And the second part of the question is, oftentimes when an incident happens like this, we see an event like this, a town hall, we see an influx of trainings, but what can actually be done past those things to ensure some change and that the needle is moved?
Mariama, I'll take that question. So no, I will just say it point blank. There is no requirement for any inclusive excellence training at the University of Kentucky. Our hope is that our faculty are weaving in interesting, necessary, and vital information about inclusion, about diversity, about equity in their syllabi and in their teaching. It is there is something called academic freedom, where we do not require faculty members to teach anything outside of their syllabus that they don't want to teach. We do have an inclusive excellence diversity education office that offers all sorts of leadership, professional development, and inclusive excellence training that offices, student groups, colleges will call upon in order to, as Dr. Tyler talked about, have us all be liberated from racism and anti-Black hatred. But nothing is required. There is no requirement for any type of professional development, leadership training, or no requirement for any faculty member to weave in. Although, you know, all sorts of accrediting bodies have outcomes around developing a global leader. So that would require us to have educational outcomes that, you know, have us more thoughtful and more intellectual about differences around the demographics of the globe. So just it's a long-winded way to say, you know, there is nothing that is required at the University of Kentucky. We encourage it. So I will stop there and allow someone else to maybe answer that second question.
And while it's not required, this is Julian Vasquez-Heilig, Dean of the College of Education. While it's not required, you know, I'll tell you a couple of stories. So one, faculty have asked us to address culture and climate. And so part of those conversations, for example, Dr. Tyler spoke at length in our recent faculty meeting about equity and inclusion. So faculty often ask us to do work around culture and climate, and that's one aspect of that. And then I had mentioned that I met with a group of 25 student leaders at my home yesterday, and we were talking about this and some other issues. And I was just blown away by a group of our teachers, our future teachers. And they said, Dean, we need courses that prepare us better to teach diverse students. I want to be able to teach in Louisville. I want to be able to teach back home in Bowling Green. I want to be able to address the needs that individual students bring to me. So students and faculty actually ask us to do this work, and that really that's really important to me as a leader.
And I'll say quickly too, that when it comes to the faculty hiring side of things, my role as Associate Dean of Inclusion and Internationalization has included serving on faculty search committees, where our goal, indeed our charge, is to ensure that we are sending out position announcements that are asking for diversity statements, that are requiring applicants to submit these types of information. If you want to work here, or at least if you want a good shot at a first round of interview and a subsequent round of interview, it will be good for us to know, as faculty to which you look to join, understand what it is that you bring to the table when it comes to your own critical self-reflection, when it comes to your understanding of how racial, gender, ableism, and other forms of diversity work, and what that means for the students that you serve. I sit on every hiring committee for that express purpose of ensuring that what we're bringing in, who we are looking to bring in rather, are going to be individuals that will do less harm.
And if I could just add to, I appreciate DEI making its way into spaces. It's also getting turned into something that's just pretty much like a buzzword too, right? Like DEI is great, but it's not liberation work all the time, right? This is journey work that we need to do if we're creating a anti-racist, liberated culture in society. And you're not gonna get that in the DEI training. You know, an 8-hour DEI certificate ain't gonna make you not be racist no more. This is something we got to commit to doing for the rest of our lives, right? So there's power in that language. Earlier, Dr. Mulder named it, Dr. Tyler's named it, we've all named it. White body supremacy and anti-Black racism are the things that we're dealing with. That those are the ruling ideologies that run every system, structure, and have been embodied by every single one of us. That's what we've all been socialized under. So where is that? Where are those through lines? Where's the white body supremacy training? Where's the anti-Black racism training? Once again, I think we've lifted some of those things. It needs to be embedded into every area that we're dealing with, but there's power in naming what it actually is. And one of the most dastardly skills of white body supremacy is the ducking and dodging and trying to stay out the way of what it actually is, right? So there's power in naming what it is. DEI is great, but let's work towards justice and liberation and healing.
Thank you, Matthew. I think I'm back. Can everyone hear me okay this time? Fantastic. Okay, so this next individual said, I truly appreciate this town hall. How do we ensure there is unity within the different colleges of Black people? This is a great platform that as a student from a different college, I would have loved to see more organizations, entities, and colleges involved. I do appreciate the College of Education for taking this initiative. Are there deans talking together, and that was put in all caps, behind the scenes, or should we expect individuality with this? So Dean Heilig, Dr. Tyler, and possibly Dr. Albert, can either three of you kind of speak to what's being done?
Well, I think one, Vice President Albert has articulated an incredible 8-step plan for the university and has communicated that to the deans. I won't speak to that if she would like to, but let me just say that I think that around the dean's table there is a lot of concern about what happened, and I think that if students encourage their deans to collaborate with each other, that would be more likely to happen. We are always open to working with other colleges in these efforts. We share our communications with the other deans so that they know what the College of Education is thinking in real time about this issue and prior issues. But we stand ready to work with the law school and with engineering and other colleges. And also, I should just say, you could transfer to the College of Education and become a teacher.
And I wanted to say really quickly that for students, undergraduate and graduate students, you have a lot of power. I think you may not feel that you have power, particularly in a situation that we're dealing with now, but you have an incredible amount of power. And you don't need to ask the administrators to do things. I think that administrators should be willing. We're fortunate that we have two here who were happy to join us. But these are things that we can demand and expect, right? And as students, those are things that you should demand and expect that you, I think Brother Matthew said it earlier, that you should be on a campus where you feel free and are affirmed and are seen. And free to thrive on a campus and not have to worry about being attacked or being called out your name or being called a vile name or something. So I'm new to the University of Kentucky. My girlfriends were like, girl, did you see this? I can't tell you how my phone blew up over the weekend with the video. And yes, I did see it. And I'll just be honest, say this is my 4th institution. While I would hope that we live in a different world, we don't. What I am encouraged by is what we've been able to put together in a very short amount of time. And I can't say that anyone said they didn't want to participate. In fact, we had to turn some people away. I was like, we can't have every we can't have every faculty member. Everybody can't be a part of this. We need to kind of limit it. And so I'm encouraged by that, and encouraged that that both Dr. Mulder and Brother Matthew are here from the community and have been willing to work as a collective with us on just being here. Because, what are the next steps? We want to make sure that we're not leading what the next steps are, that we are taking the lead from students. We really want to support and uplift, as Brother Matthew said earlier. We want to lift you and not be in the forefront. But for me, I wanted to make sure that folks knew that we were here and that we could be here for you. But in terms of strategizing, I think Sister my soror Candace wants to say something about the organizing piece, the organizing piece that Brother Matthew has spoken to and Brother Kenneth has spoken to earlier, but some strategies. Soror Candace, do you want to say something about that?
Absolutely. So one of you asked about, especially if you're new to activism or movement work, what are some strategies mobilizing? First, you have to understand what your level of risk is, what type of risk you can tolerate. And so I shared this with my mentees yesterday. There are life risks, livelihood risks, and luxury risks. And your life risk means you are willing to die for it. You're willing to put your body on the line and risk physical and emotional harm doing this work. And we know these people by name who have lost their lives doing liberation work. You might also be at the level of livelihood risk. That means that you are willing to risk your well-being, your ability to provide resources for yourself and for the people within your care. And then the rest of the risks are luxury risks. That doesn't mean they're not painful and comfortable, but somebody not liking you or somebody giving you a bad grade, those are luxury risks. And so once you establish as a collective and as individuals what level of risk you can take with no shame, no guilt, just knowing that based on your context, your intersecting marginalized and privileged identities, what type of action you can take comes out of that. So for example, if you're the type of person that this is the first time somebody in your family is at college and you want to make it through, then your strategies for resistance will look different than somebody who is 4 generations deep in academia. And the way you understand the system is going to be different. So you want to think about who has the money on campus, who has a budget on campus, and who has decision-making power on campus, because position titles do not mean decision-making power. And so establishing relationship with the assistants and the staff who know everything on campus is a good place to start, because they're going to guide you to, who you should ask about this request before you even have to make it a movement. This person can give you a yes and have $500,000 for you. That's the type of insight you want to have into the system. And that's about establishing relationships. You also want to have collective effort. And that means that when you sense that there's a lack of trust in the movement space, you want to make sure that you establish those relationships with each other so you can work with each other well. All movements, including the movement for Black Lives and the Black Panther movement and movements that have come before civil rights movement, have had infiltrators. And you have to be able to understand what infiltrators do. They disrupt movement making. They sow deception and trust and lack of trust in movement making. So for those of you who identify as Greek, there are going to be people who try to break your line. You need to lock up. And that means that you create those spaces where you come together and you say, well, if somebody tries this strategy, this is our counter strategy. If somebody tries to discredit one of the people who were affected, this is how we're going to show up in class for her if she decides to come back. We're going to sit here together 20 deep in this class just in case, just to make sure. There are always more students than there are faculty. There are always more students than there are staff. There are always more students than there are administrators. So if you decide, hey, today's the day where we're going to shift the culture and we're going to ask for what we need first, make an invitation. And if the invitation is not met with a gracious response, then you make your demands.
Can I just say that I think I can speak for my team, Candace is on that team, Kenneth is on that team, that there's no risk for you to make demands of our college. This has been a traumatic week. And so just speaking to our space, I can't speak for all spaces across campus. Speaking to our space, we would welcome a set of demands from the African-American student community, from the African-American faculty community and staff community. We welcome those demands.
Could I jump in and ask my soror, Dr. Mulder, to speak from the NAACP side, or how they could start partnering with the NAACP to learn more about mobilization on campus?
Okay, so I serve as the education chair for the local chapter, and we've done some work on the University of Kentucky. Primarily, we do work based on a complaint. So if we don't get a request for support, we don't normally, and I've been sent the video, but from my knowledge, there has never been a real complaint and an ask for the local NAACP. I know that Mr. Williams, our vice president, has spoken with the UK chapter. The NAACP leadership structure does not connect the college chapters to the local chapter. So you have a faculty and staff advisor there who works with the chapter on campus, but we do have a communication line. We would love to work with the college chapter, as well as anything. We've been to the dean of the College of Medicine. We have made demands on behalf of people, because the NAACP getting involved does mean something across this country. We do have the local, state, and national chapter to use. And we can do that, but we normally do that when we're requested to intervene.
Thank you, Dr. Mulder. I would just add, reiterate some of what Dr. Candace said. When we talk about organizing, for me, it all starts on relationship building. I think we've all been socialized in this world, a capitalistic world, this white body supremacy world that makes us be so transactional, right? So how can we disrupt the status quo, right? One way I try to disrupt is I'm looking to build relationship first and foremost. So when you're organizing, that's the kind of thing that can help block those infiltrators, right? That's the kind of, if we're in relationship with each other, we know who each other are, we're gonna care about each other. Yes, baby, I hear you, everybody else do too. But we gotta prioritize relationship building. The other piece is joy. Joy, and always move at the speed of your own capacity. These issues aren't going anywhere, right? Another characteristic of white body supremacy, is urgency, right? And I know when these things happen, we wanna hurry up and do things, we wanna hurry up and go, but we really need to get back with each other, get in right relationship with self, so then we can be in right relationship with each other, feed our joy, because that's something that has had our people survive atrocities, has been our joy. And then when we're pushed to our capacity, the collective care part is one of our people's coming in and saying, sit your ass down, you need to rest, right? So relationship building, capacity, joy, when we're thinking about organizing, and then take your time. We're standing on the shoulders of our ancestors that have been doing this work, right? And we want, and the last piece I would add is think about our descendants. When I pray and I do my spiritual thing, I pray 2 and 4, my ancestors, my relatives, and my descendants, because I want to imagine a future where we don't have to live like this, where we don't have to live in a constant state of trauma, right? So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Brother Matthew. We're going to close out this town hall on those words of affirmation, to take time to reflect, to find your spiritual space, whether it's prayer or meditation, or meditation at an altar, however you find that spiritual center. Do that, and then find your people, and let's organize in a way that is productive for our cause. And if you are not yet ready for that movement work, then step back and let the folks who are lead that work. We don't want to harm the movement forward. So I want to take the time to thank all of our panelists for joining us, thanking the audience. We had over 200 people join in today, and so we thank you. We're especially grateful to the students who participated, and we will do the best we can to support you and lift you. If you would like to do another town hall, just please reach out to us. And I want to thank the team, Mariama Lockington, who is our tech guru. She does everything, chief of staff. Dr. Sarah LaCour, who's our assistant director, our graduate students, Tiaja, who keeps us moving and keeps us on track. So I'm so grateful for them. And Jesse Hayden, for sure, who manages our social media. So he created the posts. So if you follow us on Instagram and Twitter, you will find the latest things that are happening here. And I'm just so grateful for you all, and hope that we can support our young sisters as they travel home and get the healing that they need. Thank you so much, and have a good evening. Be safe. Take care.